Back to hardball. Mitt Romney has a tough sell to make in Michigan, you might say. He has to somehow convince voters that he opposed President Obama's bailout of Detroit, while at the same time arguing that the bailout worked because the president did exactly what Romney said he suggested all along. Well, here's Romney taking a stab at that argument at Wednesday night's debate.
I wrote an op-ed in the paper, and I said, absolutely not. These companies need to go through a managed bankruptcy. Just like airlines have, just like other industries have, go through a managed bankruptcy. And if they go through that managed bankruptcy and shed the excessive cost that's been put on them by the UAW and by their own mismanagement, then if they need help coming out of bankruptcy, the government can provide guarantees and get them back on their feet.
Well, just a proof, by the way, that he had that audience stacked out there. They applauded the word bankruptcy. No audience in America applauds the word bankruptcy unless they were cued to do it by a bunch of whips out in the audience, was what he had going there. Anyway, Steve Ratner was the lead advisor on President Obama's auto task force, and John Hollman is MSNBC political analyst and writes for New York Magazine. Gentlemen, I want to start with Steve. Let's take a look at something you wrote in today's New York Times, an opinion piece. You write that Romney's managed bankruptcy plan, quote, sounds like a wonderfully sensible approach, except that it's utter fantasy. I've heard you say this before, but remind us, what is this plan and would it have killed the auto industry?
Well, you just heard him say that he wanted them to go through bankruptcy, and then if government needed to help on the way out, they could. The problem with his idea is that if the auto industry had gone into a so-called managed bankruptcy, it would have never come out, because in late 2008, when President Bush actually first gave the money, and then in 2009 when President Obama did, there wasn't a penny of private capital anywhere in the system that had any interest in financing these companies. They would have shut their doors, laid off their workers, and liquidated, and put over 1 million people out of work.
So the reason the government had to cough up the money with the guarantees or whatever was because there wasn't anybody out there saying, I'd love to invest in the auto industry.
Correct. Look, none of us anyway, liked the idea of government intervening in these industries. We didn't do it because we wanted to. We did it because we had to. It was a unique moment in time, a unique moment in American business and financial history when there simply wasn't any private capital available. And our view was that that's what government was there to do, to step in when markets fail.
Let me go over to John on this. It seems to me that the success of the auto industry right now is really, I have to tell you, one of those things that you never expected to happen. I mean, I'm obviously a civilian in terms of the economy out there, but the fact that it came back so big, we've got 3 auto companies, we've got cars, what is it, Ford down #1. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're taking on the foreign challengers. They're doing so well. This is a victory for Obama, isn't it, politically?
Well, yeah, it certainly is. I mean, Steve makes the correct point that there really was. People try to take this out of context. It was an extraordinary moment. It wasn't just there weren't people wanting to invest in car companies. There was just no private capital at that period, given the state of the economy and the financial system after the near collapse. Barack Obama and his team, with Steve and others, felt like this was the necessary thing to do. It was a huge gamble in some ways, because if it hadn't worked out as well as it has, it could have been a huge political albatross around his neck. But instead, he's got a great club to beat Mitt Romney with, or whoever the Republican nominee is, because Rick Santorum also opposed the auto bailout. He says, all bailouts. Barack Obama won Michigan in 2008 without this kind of success behind him. He won even places like Macomb County, famous home of the Reagan Democrats, won that by 7 points. With this as his main calling card, it's going to be very hard for a Republican to beat him in Michigan, I think.
I think it'll also help in Ohio and Missouri. But let me show right now President Obama's Super PAC Priorities USA. This is his ad here. It's released this ad hitting Romney this week.
His message was clear.
Let Detroit go bankrupt.
Mitt Romney. There's little question he made a fortune from businesses he helped destroy.
Bankrupt.
Romney pocketed huge fees shortly before companies collapsed.
Bankrupt.
Even when the businesses failed, Romney came out ahead. Are those the values we want in an American president?
Bankrupt.
Well, Steve, you've really done the country a service here working for President Obama in this regard. I just want to ask you a little secret. Maybe you can't tell me. What gave you you remember after World War II, you don't remember, but you know from history how all that you had to do was reopen the trading zones in Europe. That's really what the Marshall Plan was about. Get those countries that had gone through World War II on both sides, get them trading again. Recreate what's already there, the strong financial structure and economic trading structure of Europe. Get it back on its feet. How did you know there were still fundamentals there in the American auto industry that could compete?
We didn't know for sure, but we did the work that you do. We treated this like a private equity investment exercise that I had done in the private sector and my colleagues had done. And we went in there and we tore these companies apart through due diligence and put them back together, consulted a lot of experts. And we believe there was nothing fundamentally wrong with these companies. They were actually quite efficient. They were starting to make better products. They simply had too much debt, too many liabilities, and frankly, they had some costs, including some for labor, that weren't sustainable. And it was a restructuring exercise, and we felt very confident about General Motors. We felt pretty confident about Chrysler. But frankly, they've actually exceeded our expectations. They've done a fabulous job.
Can we do this across the board? I mean, Ed Schultz, my colleague, talks about it a lot. I care about it a lot. This whole area between Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, now I call it Scranton-Oshkosh, can we rebuild American manufacturing the way we rebuilt the auto industry? Is it big enough, this idea here, to go across the board?
No, unfortunately, I don't think this model fits completely. This was a unique set of circumstances with companies that had been mismanaged for a long time, that built up liabilities for a long time. The fact is that we can do better in manufacturing. We are doing better, but we have to remember that we are competing against a lot of countries that are also doing better at much, much lower wages. And so what we want to do is do the best we can in manufacturing while we build up in other areas where we have a comparative advantage.
One last thought quickly to you, John, buddy. It seems to me that there's a number of, if you've got a 63-28 advantage down among the way people look at this, they love this bailout thing. I'm looking at the map we just looked at with Chuck. I mean, you take that advantage, 63-28, people really like the bailout. And then you take it to states like Michigan, Ohio, Missouri, maybe not Indiana because it's tough to get. But there's a lot of states at stake here on this issue.
Yes, there is. And look, Chris, you remember in 2010 when Republicans swept through those Midwestern industrial state governorships and we looked at President Obama's approval ratings in those states, we pointed to that as one of the biggest political problems he was going to have in 2012. Now his numbers are looking really good in most of those states. It makes the map a lot easier for him if he can then, and as you pointed out, there are a lot of states, not just Michigan, that have suppliers, parts, lots of related industrial activity that feed the auto industry. They're all benefiting from this too. It's a big part of the reason why President Obama looks so much better across that region now is the fact that the auto industry has rebounded in the way it has, and it's a huge, huge electoral asset for him going forward into November.
Well said. Thank you, Steve Rattner. Again, a great service to the country by Steve Rattner in bringing back the American auto industry. And John Heilman, sir, as always.